Sometimes when you're driving down the road all by yourself, you begin to hear a voice that tells you need to look around, pay attention, maybe something isn't quite right. That voice is me. It's the voice of Gord. Hey everybody, welcome back to Voice of Gord. Thanks for listening. Little intro here for you before we get to today's returning guest, Mr. Chace Barber of Edison Motors, for his third time on the show. Just wanted to let you guys know that later this week I'm going to be recording with a gentleman by the name of Shannon Everett, who is the man behind American Truckers United. Himself and a Arkansas State Legislature representative by the name of Wayne Long will be joining the show to discuss an unfortunate reality of life on the road these days, as my fellow truckers can tell you, is that we've been flooded with all kinds of migrants over the last few years and all kinds of new entrants to the trucking business who are maybe not qualified, mostly don't speak English, don't understand trucking culture or how to drive. This winter has been showing that in spades. Anybody on social media is seeing videos of truck crashes and pile-ups and jackknifing and just all kinds of totally unprofessional behavior on the part of people who should be far more professional. Shannon's going to come on the show to discuss the hows and whys that is. It's going to be a banger. He's got all of the receipts. We're going to be asking questions about why there's been massive increases in the issue of CDLs in certain states. They've gone like 20 to 50 times the number of CDLs being issued between 2019 and 2020, and then that goes up again in 2021, 2022, 2023, and we should be asking the question why. We'll be comparing that to initiatives from the Biden administration and the usual lying of the industry to itself about a shortage of drivers, and various state-level initiatives where they're trying to make it worse. They're trying to speed run us with even more people by lowering standards to get your CDL and allowing people to get licenses who are not American citizens or even have a permanent residency card like myself. It's going to be a very, very important show. Super information packed. We're going to give you suggestions about how to speak with your local legislators and state reps about this. This garbage has got to stop. We are recording this Friday, I believe it's February 28th, and I'm going to be getting it out to you as soon as possible. This show here with Chace is a good one. He's going to update us on what's been going on with Edison Motors, troubles they've had with the government in British Columbia, finding a new manufacturing location, issues with Canadian investment laws, and all kinds of other great info. Chace is a great guy. You guys all know him and love him from his videos. He's a master at social media, over and above being a backyard engineering genius and just a great guy. So, we'll get to Chace here very soon. If you haven't already, subscribe to the show. Head on over to my Substack, autonomoustruckers.substack.com. Tell your friends, subscribe through whatever podcasting platform you find the show at. If you have anything to say, questions, comments, suggestions, corrections, or hate mail, send it on over to me, gordylocks@protonmail.com. That address will be down in the show notes, my Substack. I'll have links to a bunch of Chace's videos and Edison Motors. Oh, hey, and I just wanted to remind you all, I'm writing a book, End of the Road, coming out in February 2026 with Creed and Culture Books. I mentioned it in the show here with Chace. He's going to be featured in one of the chapters, or maybe even throughout. If you want to help me out with that book, there'll be links down in the show notes to donate to help me cover my costs while I'm writing the book. I've got to take a few months off work in order to do that. And the book is going to examine what's become of the American truck driver here in the last couple of decades and why everything just keeps getting worse and worse. That follows along with the interview I'm having with Shannon Everett later this week. All right, without any further delay, let's get to Mr. Chace Barber at Edison Motors. All right, good day, everybody. Welcome back to another awesome episode of Voice of Gord. I am friggin' pumped. One of my favorite people on planet Earth and one of the finest Canadians to ever come out of the Maple Gulag is rejoining the show to tell us all about what's going on with the only large truck manufacturing company in Canada. I'm sure you can guess who I'm talking about. Third time appearance on Voice of Gord. He's been extremely busy since the last time I saw him. Please welcome back to the show, Mr. Chace Barber of Edison Motors.
Hey Gord, thanks for having me back on again. Always a pleasure.
Oh, yeah, you've been a busy man. I've been
Holy,
trying to organize this for a little while, but Edison Motors is just doing so many amazing things. You just don't have any time.
I
So,
honestly we don't. We need to grow. We need to expand the team. But we're getting there. Turns out though, it's a little bit harder when you don't take any venture capital because the venture capital guys kind of suck. So we're doing it the bootstrap way, but we're
all right, we will
we're
get
gonna
to
try
that.
to compensate
So,
by just working 18-hour days, 7 days a week, and just not sleeping. So fuck it. We'll just do that.
I,
I would rather work 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, and run this business on our own terms, the way it should be ran, rather than just take the money and have be more comfortable.
right. Yeah. Well, usually that money comes with strings attached, be it the government, be it venture capital, or the value scraper vultures of Wall Street. But
Yeah.
anyways, last time I spoke with you in depth was right before you brought Topsy, your fully built frame up, brand new uh, diesel electric hybrid tractor to an engineering firm just outside Toronto to get something done to it called throttle mapping. And then you and I met in real life at a little party down in Vineland, Ontario, where you showed Topsy to the world. It was a little bit of a rainy day, but still, fun was had by all. And it was the first public appearance of Topsy in Ontario. So, what's been happening since? That's like 15, 16 months ago.
So it's been a little busy. It's been a little bit. So to bring it off from back 15 months ago, so the truck was just in its original infancy. Like that truck was only a month old or 3 weeks old when you seen it. So we had to do things like throttle mapping, programming, integration. We had to get that truck running the way it should be, where all the components are playing nicely together. We did that for about 3 to 4 months. We got it to the point where we could take it to do the government testing that's required. So we did all that. We That took another like 3, 4 months, and a stack of paperwork the biggest stack of paperwork I've ever seen in my life. And then, but we did it. We passed it. We got a VIN number. It became road legal. It got a license plate, and we were able to drive that truck on the road. We did some testing with it. We did the actual real world testing.
I saw a YouTube video where you guys had it hooked up to a set of logging super bees and you're dragging a load of logs around.
Yeah, we delivered a couple loads of logs into the mill, and then the mill closed down because our government can't keep a fucking sawmill or a business open. So we
Oof.
took it over to Alberta, and we pulled the low bed around Alberta. Um, yeah, we took it off to some customers. They wanted to buy a truck, and now we're building a few more trucks. We then had to deal with the process of like moving out of a tent because the first couple trucks we built are in a tent. Actually, the next customer trucks are still being started in the tent right now. But yeah, we had to find a shop. That was a nightmare. We found a shop. We got investors that approved the shop to buy it, and then the city of Terrace said, "No, we don't want you. You're kind of manufacturing's dirty. We don't want you in town. We don't
Yeah,
want
I
you."
heard. I remember you talking about that story, and a number of my associates, like I live in the United States now. A number of my friends down here were like, "WTF? This stupid town in Canada doesn't want this like cutting edge technology manufacturer in their town. Like, what's going on here?"
They would rather see. They're like, "Oh, that location is right next to a highway. It's probably a better location for like a business like a Tim Hortons or something." It manufacturing doesn't fit into their 10-year goal and vision that they see that corner. Like the sawmill closed down across the road, So they're like, maybe we can revitalize that area and make it a little bit more like gentrified and less sawmill, less manufacturing, more like coffee shop, boutique, highway
Okay,
things like
hold on. Okay, so for my listeners who are mostly Americans, there's a few Canadians, but most of the Canadians who listen to the show have never been to Terrace, BC. Can you describe for people where exactly in British Columbia Terrace is, what this highway you're just talking about looks like, how many people live there, and how far away it is from Vancouver?
So Terrace is about a small town of 5,000 people. It's a 6 hour drive to like the next city. Like the next being Prince George. There's a couple of smaller other like 10,000, 20,000 people towns, but the next major city is 7 hours away. And then you got another, so you're 14, 16 hour drive from Vancouver out into the middle of the bush. They had a sawmill that was employing hundreds of people. That closed down. The pipeline stopped going through. They needed the work, they needed the jobs, but basically it came down to two dickheads. Really, it's just two dickheads on the city planning. And they're like, well, it doesn't fit our vision. We could apply for, he's like, we'll apply. And he's like, what we could do is we could apply for a permit change. And it may take 3 years, and it's probably going to be a no because it doesn't fit our vision of the plant going forward. Just manufacturing isn't the kind of like it's dirty, it's gross, it's not really what we want to. We can give you a 3 year temporary permit. I'll apply for that, and we'll see a 3 year. But we're opening up a new industrial lot, in partnership with the First Nations, and we've got 400 acres, five whatever it was, of industrial lot. They wanted us to buy their fancy thing, and you're like, so you will give you a 3 year permit, and then you have to move into the industrial lot, but that'll give you enough time to build a shop. Like, I'm sorry, but I'm not relocating all of my employees, family members, everything to your shithole town to be in a place like all of a sudden. So I'm going to bring in this investor. We're going to buy this $2 million shop. And to give you an idea, this shop is where Hayes Trucks used to do their trucks. Plant designed for semi-truck production. This is literally a plant across from a sawmill that's to set up, and you want us to rebuild a whole, like it's got good bones, it's a good building, and you want us to rebuild a whole brand new shop. Like, I'm sorry, I'm not spending $2 million to buy a factory just to then have to build a new factory within a 3 year time frame. And then they wanted an insane price, $280,000 or $250,000 per acre for bare unserviced land in a shithole. It's a nice town. I'll give Terry. But to build it 18 hours away in the middle of nowhere, $200,000 an acre. Like that's Kelowna prices.
I
Canada.
know. Well, so I want this story is infuriating to me, right? Over and above, the usual like anti-business nonsense, bureaucracy, government getting in the way. Set all that stuff aside. That building that you guys were trying to move into, the home of Hayes Trucks. All the old guys out there will know what we're talking about. Hayes was like a premier BC based manufacturer of highway tractors, logging trucks, bed trucks, all kinds of stuff for the Alberta oil field. In the 1960s and 70s, Hayes was like a premier brand truck, right? So there's this history in BC. There's this history with Hayes, and I have a little connection to them because the people I worked for in Ontario were the biggest Hayes dealer in Ontario and the last Hayes dealer in Eastern Canada to close once Hayes went out of business, right? Earl Paddock Transport. And they even took the Hayes Bear and made it their own logo for their company. So, I got a picture with me and my dad standing in front of a Hayes Clipper at Paddock's 60th anniversary party. Like,
it came out to the show with Topsy, didn't it?
That's right. Yeah, it sat right next to your truck.
Yeah. Like, and we could have had the Hayes factory where they built the HDXs, like the off-highway rigs. Like, what the? And you're like, it doesn't fit our vision, and we don't want to see the manufacturing there. And get this, you're like, the sawmill closed down, so maybe somebody wants to do a residential development on that old sawmill property, and they're not going to want to have a manufacturing place. How about we get jobs? I'm sorry, but we can't support the entire Canadian economy off of Tim Hortons because, believe it or not, you can't grow an economy based on a foreign-owned business that's just hiring temporary foreign workers for minimum wage. That's not a sustainable thing. All you're
Oh
doing
boy.
is unprecedented debt, bring a bunch of temporary foreign workers in who are
Uh,
going to increase the demand on the hospital, the school system. They're not going to have the tax revenue. We were going to be hiring 40, 50, 60 well-paid mechanic positions. That actually stimulates an economy, but no, doesn't fit two particular guys' vision for the town. And if they did do it, it's a 3-year permitting process, and it may be a no at the end of it. You're gonna have to hire all this money for consultants. Like you're gonna have to. They're told us you got to hire consultants, and the consultants are gonna have to write reports for the city. And you're like, how about you guys just fuck off, and we'll find another town. We'll find
so
somewhere else. Like, believe it or not, our only option is not Terrace. You guys wanted us to come here. You invited us up. Your economic development officer, who was fantastic. I have nothing bad to say. He is one of the best government workers I've ever seen in my life. The guy was motivated. As far as government goes, he had passion. He wanted to see growth. He wanted to see the he sold us on the rail relocate. Like he's like, we got rail ports. He connected me with all the local business. This is a fab shop. This is the machinist shop. We'll introduce you. He's like, we'll bring you all out for coffee. You can sit down and discuss whether our town and like, wow, we're like, there really is a supporting industry from the logging industry and these businesses that are needing the work that we can use to supply parts and that economic development officer did everything he needed to do to convince us that we could economically operate out of Terrace. And then all the time and resources that he spent, and like he went above and beyond. Like most government workers don't care. You say you're
no.
actually cared about his community and wanted to see the jobs come there. And then it got to the city members, and they're like, it's not our prime. Nah, I don't want manufacturing. Like,
Wow, that's insane. So this I remember in 2005, I went up to the Yukon to help my Auntie Kate move. My Aunt Kate and Uncle Dennis used to live in Whitehorse, and that was their second stint in the Yukon. They did a little stint back there in the 70s when my dad, my Uncle Bruce lived up there too. This was before I was born. But anyway, I'm hanging around in Whitehorse for a few days, getting ready for the move and helping them out and checking the place out. And it was, I think, 6 or 7 years after the big move when Hong Kong's lease under the British government was relinquished and Hong Kong was reabsorbed back into mainland China, like as a political entity. And all the people in money with Hong Kong left. And a lot of them came to Vancouver. And what had happened as like a second order effect of this is a bunch of Vancouver people who had prime real estate in places like Richmond and various suburbs around Vancouver and in the city of Vancouver itself sold their properties and cashed out. And a bunch of them moved to Whitehorse for some reason. And like Whitehorse is kind of already a government town because it's like the far north. And other than mining, the only other business in town is the government, and dealing with the natives and whatnot. And there was this influx of NDP type people to Whitehorse. They already had a bunch of them, in town to begin with, between all the federal employees. But then all these like rich Vancouver people moved to Whitehorse in the very early 2000s, and you start seeing crap like this go on. And I'm just wondering about these two douchebags in Terrace that like gave you the runaround when you're trying to actually help their town.
yeah, as far as I know, that they were Terrace locals, but whatever. It's
Yeah.
they just seem to have this attitude that I don't think they realize there seems to be a disconnect with government workers in Canada that we need to change. They don't realize the demands placed on business. Now, if you run in a business, you need to take investment money to grow the business. Like a lot of businesses based on investment. Businesses in Canada need to raise money. Now, investors want to see between a 3 to at most 5 year return on that investment. And we could show that at this valuation for the company, with this investment, we can produce this many trucks, and this is where we're going to be at, and this is the growth. But when you get into a business that says, hey, it's going to be 3 years on fucking permitting alone, I'm out. Every investor says, I'm out. I'll go down to the States where they don't have the permitting and I'll build the business there. Like I can go down. We were promised that some of the states in there, they can get us any permit we need, any rezoning change we need within less than 2 weeks to a month. And we guarantee you we'll have that. because they understand that the business needs is that they need to go out, they need to put together a plan. This is where we're going to build. This is our business. This is where we're going to build it. This is how much it's going to cost to build. This is when we expect it to be done. They can't do 3 years on a maybe. There's not one investor boardroom I can go into and say, hey, I got a plan that maybe in 3 to 5 years we'll be able to do this. And if not, we'll have to relocate. Like, they'll just come back and say, figure it out. Now you're stuck spending money on consultants. Now your early lead is like, hey, we're with this hybrid or with this truck. Like, sorry, we can't just die on the vine for it. We'll go somewhere where they don't have that. It's not a choice between your overpriced, shitty industrial lot or this shop here for the 3 year permit. Like, we'll just move. And that's what we're seeing happening in Canada is that we see an outflux of businesses from Canada to the United States. We want good jobs. We want a good economy. We got to fix that bullshit over regulation and permitting and all that to attract the business back to get back to the 3 to 5 year ROI so that they can raise the money. And we would do it. We could re-stimulate that manufacturing industry if we just got a little bit of this bureaucracy the fuck out of the way. Sorry, I
Right.
don't know if I'm to swear at the podcast.
No. I'm probably gonna let this one go without editing it. I think in our last one you were also quite animated and dropped quite a few F bombs, which I surgically removed just to make it a little more palatable for the kids. But I think I might let this one ride. So speaking of moving to the US, you appeared on my buddy Timothy Dooner's show, What the Truck. Shout out Timothy Dooner.
Yeah, that guy's awesome.
Yeah, he is. Great guy. Shout out Freight Waves, Craig Fuller, all them folks. And
He's the first guy that ever picked me up to put me on any kind of interview thing.
right, no, Tim sniffs him out, man. He's good. He's got the feel for what slaps. So anyway, you're on What the Truck. You're talking to him about these very same things, and he and you discussed this offer you were given to move to the United States. I think it was Arizona.
Yeah, Nevada, Arizona, we had a couple from them states.
Right. And then you did one. I cannot, I'm going to have to go and find that clip and I'm going to put it in the show notes here because I want everybody to watch it. So we're having this big debate right now, right? Like Donald Trump has been like trolling Trudeau. He'd be a better governor than a prime minister. We should annex Canada and make it the 51st state. And everyone's running around with their hair on fire. Trudeau is prorogued Parliament. Canada is a total mess. All these like no-name investigative journalists that nobody knew about 2 weeks ago are now getting famous because all of their work showing that the Chinese Communist Party is up to their eyeballs in the Port of Vancouver. Canada's this huge narco trafficking hub. All of this stuff is coming out. Canada's a mess. Now the Liberals are trying to airdrop this WEF bankster dickhead Mark Carney in to run the country in a completely undemocratic process. Canada is foobarred. Chace Barber.
We're not doing great.
We're not doing great. But Chace Barber goes on What the Truck and says, no, I believe in Canada. I believe in British Columbia. I love my province. I love my communities. And we're staying. And we're going to fight these guys and we're going to build trucks here.
That's right.
That was awesome.
And I'm a firm belief that, you know what? If you're gonna complain, like, you can either make two choices. You can pack up your bags and leave, or you can say, fuck it, I'm gonna stay, I'm gonna fight, because I believe in this country, I know the people of this country, and we've done amazing things in the past. If all of the people that are innovative can build a business, can do these things, flee, well, where does that leave the country? Like, I have the means to go down to the States right now, and I could relocate, but where does that leave everyone that can't do that? Everyone that's stuck here? Or I could buckle down and we could build the place. It's where I speak about, like, my views on immigration. I think we've had way too much mass immigration in Canada. And one of those things about it is the problem I have with immigration as a whole is that even if you look at the argument that they say, well, we take the most ambitious people into the country and but right now it seems like we take Tim Hortons workers. But in the past, the immigration model had been people looking to leave their countries. They're leaving these underdeveloped nations and they're coming here and they're trying to start a business or do things, and we take the best of the best. The problem with that is that you do a bottoming out of their culture. So if you do take the best of the best from Africa or India, the people that can start businesses, they have enough money to move to a different country. They have enough ambition to move to a different country, and they have enough intelligence to get through it, figure it out, and then figure out how to move. You're taking the best people from the country who are unhappy with it. Those are the people that need to stay there, because if you just constantly keep taking the best people out of Africa or India and relocating them here, those countries will never grow. They never improve.
It's the
You
old
need
brain drain argument.
there. Yeah, you're doing a brain drain to the developing third world. Well, that's not good for the third world. That means that the third world will always stay as the third world. Eventually, it's a little bit heartless, but you got to say, no, you're ambitious, you're smart, you're talented. Please stay in Uganda and just start fixing Uganda. You want to do a business? Do it in Uganda. Start a mining company, start this. Like, do what you need to do to fix your country, but you can't come here. Yes, you may make Canada better, but you're
Well,
going to make your country worse. So I can't get out there, have those views, say that, and be like, and then all of a sudden we're like, Canada's kind of turning into a third world country. Well, I'm just going to pack up and move to the States. No, I should stay in Canada and I should make Canada the best country it should be.
all right, you got an uphill battle, sir.
But we found it. Hey, we found a place that shares the vision
You
on the new.
did. That's right. You guys got an announcement. You're relocating from your current facility, which is, as you say, a tent in your parents' backyard near Merritt, and
Yep.
now you're moving to
Golden, BC.
home of the scale, home of the first inspection you get to when you come in from Alberta.
That's right. We're right across the road from that scale.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah. So we were looking generally at moving to the States, or going down there. Like there's just after Terrace, we're defeated. And we're like, okay, like I had my values. I think I can make Canada better. I think we can do that, but it's just all right. After this. And then we reached out and then they said, look, it's not 250,000 an acre. We've got in land here that you can use for $9,000 an acre. Okay, well now we're talking. That's it. That's in a price range that's reasonable at 9,000. Or Merritt was $800,000 an acre. Like we're not 800,000, we're 9,000. That's affordable. That, and then they said, and here's what we do. We are not going to have any zoning on that property, and we don't require any building permits. As long as you meet the building code of Canada or building code of British Columbia, you can build whatever you want. Our view, and this is what they told me, our view is that it's your property. We're not going to get in the way and stack a bunch of municipal services and municipal permits on that. It's your property. You do whatever you want. You need a house, you build a house. You need a test track, you build a test track. You need an office, build an office. We're not going to tell you what you can and can't do on your own land. So that means that we can accommodate our future growth as well. It's like, look, we're going to be growing this company. We're going
How
to be
many acres did you buy?
305 acres.
Oh, wow. That's a big chunk.
Yeah, I was like, it worked out to 2.7 million.
That's not terrible for a manufacturing facility.
No, you know what? Like, just talking with that one other company that needed they bought some things for a cement plant. They had to go to and they just finished paying $18 million for 40 acres.
Where was that?
We're right off the Trans-Canada Highway. We're right off of the CP Kansas City main line. And there's 4 sidings that run onto the property. So we need to ship things via rail, like wild. Like that brings the cost rate down. Like we have our own rail reload facility on the property. We got 305 acres. We have no zoning and we can do whatever we want. Like we can accommodate our test track for our CMBSS compliance. We can accommodate building a future shop. If we need to bring in some staff housing, I can build some staff housing. Like I can do what I need to do with that property. Like
what do you mean by staff housing? Would you is there like I don't know that area very well. Like I've trucked through it. I've been to Revelstoke to like go snowboarding a few times, Banff, Lake Louise, and obviously trucking back and forth. I'm not totally familiar with Golden. I just know it's a smallish town. But would you feel like you actually need to house your own employees? Like you couldn't, like, is there not enough going on in Golden?
I'm building a cabin on the property.
All right.
A lot of the rent is getting stupid in Canada. And a lot of it's like, okay, well, like if we do have to entice somebody to move it and then they got to find rent, like we were thinking of just building in some. Number one, we probably want some cabins to accommodate some people that have to move until they can find a place to rent. So that's not a barrier to them to relocate. If we find the right person with the right talent that fits into Edison, we can then just have them move in there and be like, okay, you got this place until you can find a place to rent. Like, don't let that be the barrier.
It's
Or
kind of like camp life at places in northern Alberta and BC where people go live for a couple of weeks, right?
yeah, we were thinking honestly that too. It's like, hey, why don't we bring in a well site, like a well site Alberta camp? Like you can buy them at Ritchie Brothers, you bring it in there, and then people can do 1 week on, 1 week off. Like if they're from Calgary or something that's 2.5 hours away, they can drive in from Calgary, work for a week, and then go back and stay in camp while they're working. Like there's ways that we can do it, but the point is that we have the option without needing to do a 2 year permitting process to put the camp in. We just bring the camp in, we lay it out, we set it up. If we need it, we can do it. If we need to grow, I don't know whether we're good. And that's the thing is that I don't know what I don't know. Where are we going to be at in 5 years from now, 10 years from now? What are we going to need? Are we going to need to like having no zoning and no permits means that I can accommodate my business's needs. And it's not like it's the Wild West. Some people are like, oh, it's going to be the Wild West. That would be completely irresponsible to let people do that. No, we still have a provincial building code that said you need snow loads, you need seismic, you need insulation values, you need to build to a certain code that's going to be safe. You can't just build whatever you want, but they're not stacking additional layers on top of that. And because of that, they have a very low property tax rate. Like talking with them, like, oh man, $2 million property paying like $500 a year in property tax, like $50 a month property tax. Some people are paying our annual property tax monthly on just a house. But they said, well, now if we got the permitting process, now I got to charge for permits. Now I also need to have a staff for that. Then I need HR, then I need administration, then we need more paperwork, and then we need more permitting. And every time we add another layer of complexity and consultants and everything, I've got to charge for that. So we need to increase the property taxes to be able to charge that. If we get rid of that, we can keep the taxes low, we can be attractive to businesses, and we can keep growing our community. It's like, holy crap, this small town, this regional district has things figured out. Like, why aren't we replicating that across North America? Like, or at least across Canada and be like, hey, we want business to come back. That's how you do it.
Right. So when do you move to Golden officially?
Once the snow leaves.
So you're going to be moving in the spring.
Yeah, start the process anyways. So we're doing our investment raise right now. That's ongoing. And we've raised enough money to buy that property. So we've purchased it. We now own it. We've taken possession of it. We've raised enough money to cover our operating expenses for the next 2 years, wages and that. We've raised enough to build our next two trucks that are test trucks for ourselves that aren't going to a customer. The next thing we need to raise money for is for the shop. So what we're doing is we're going to leave that investment up for about 4 to 6 weeks, basically till the end of March. And where we're at by the end of March, we're going to look at that budget and then we're going to figure out, okay, what kind of shop can we afford? And we'll
Right.
build a shop based on what we could raise for that. Like, I don't know, it's a pretty simple way of doing it, but hopefully we can raise enough that we can raise $1 million and get into a nice shop and start building these trucks.
So speaking of simplicity and the fundraising, we had a little text exchange here a couple of weeks ago because I missed the boat on the crowdfunding, and there's some particular rules that Edison is having to follow, which means you're only allowed to crowdfund to a certain level, and then everything after that, you have to be a certified investor, which means you have to have like 200K in assets or something. So like basically you're blocking out a guy like me that hasn't got two pennies to rub together.
Yeah.
Although I do have one and I could give it to you, but now I
$200
can't.
gross income per year. So you got to either have over $1 million in financial assets, or you got to make over 200,000 a year. And in the States, they have to prove it. Like they have to go out and get their accountant or a notarized thing that's like, yeah, I'm officially this. My accountant is a license, and they're putting their license and they're writing this letter to submit that we have to store. At least in Canada, they just have to say that they make that. And like we were allowed to take them on their word. Like unless we have a thing of that we think they're lying, we can just take them on their word. So like, but that's still like it doesn't make any sense. Like they have a $1.5 million crowdfunding, and we filled that, and I believe it was like 6 hours. We announced it in
Wow.
5 or 6 hours. That was just filled. It was like, hey, we sent out an email to people, and it was filled before I could even really talk about it publicly. I think I talked about it, and then after I talked about it, we were like halfway there, and then it just filled immediately within like an hour. Like there was people who are like, I just seen this thing come up an hour ago and it's already filled. And you're like, yeah, sorry.
Wow.
But like, why is it capped? And it's like the average investment was about $2,000. And we were thinking about it, like, why does it have a $1.5 million cap? That's just the government needlessly throttling businesses back by like, oh, whoa, 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 whoa. You can only do 1.5 million. Beyond that, you have to go to accredited or venture capital. We can't have businesses that aren't controlled by the banking sector actually being existing, guys. Like it needs to be controlled by large investors or
That's a really good point, because one of the, I talk to a lot of people here in the States, and they always ask me, what in the hell is going on in Canada? And there's this sort of concept I have to explain to them called the Laurentian elite, which is a small group of families based in Toronto and Montreal who are the people that really run the country. And they are the people behind Canada's banks and some of the biggest companies, and they've been around for decades, if not centuries. And those people are represented in politics by the Liberal Party of Canada, and their man is Justin Trudeau. And they are the people that make all of these asinine rules, as you just described. Why is it that a guy like you, a small company, can't just go crowdfund as he pleases? They put this silly cap on it. Why? So that because they want to control you.
Well, yeah, because it's to protect the investors. Is that, and number one, it's insulting as fuck to me. They say, but they literally said like, well, we don't, unless you're rich enough, we don't think you're smart enough to assess the risks of investment yourself, and you're probably not smart enough with your own money to invest. That's only for the only rich people are smart enough to figure out whether something's a good investment or not. And we don't want the average person taking that kind of financial risk that they may not be intelligent enough to figure out.
Oh, it's super insulting to people. Super insulting.
Yeah, and then like if that was actually what they meant, and like that's what they truly believed, why the fuck are casinos open?
Because they need to launder money for the Chinese Communist Party, bro. So did you? Oh, so
I'm sorry, but do you go into Vegas and do they come out with a risk disclosure form? Like, hey, we're only going to allow so many casino goers today. We're at our limit, but unless you make over 200,000 a year, and at that case, we can allow you to invest up to a maximum or gamble a maximum of $10,000. But please sign these risk disclosures, and you're aware that you could lose all the money you're gambling. No, they say, hey, have some drinks on us. Make sure you're well drunk, well lubricated, because you make better financial decisions when you're drinking. That's allowed, but raising money for a business isn't. It's all about control.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. And the casino analogy is very apropos, given that, and the banksters. So you knew that the Toronto Dominion Bank of Canada was fined something like $3.8 billion by American financial regulators?
Yeah.
Right. And now with all of this investigations into the narco trafficking and fentanyl production going on, centered also in British Columbia. I mean, the British Columbia government is giving Chace Barber and Edison Motors such a hard time, but all these CCP aligned triads are like just flooding precursor product through the Port of Vancouver. They busted this place in Falklands, BC, that had enough fentanyl to kill everybody in Canada twice. Oh no, that's fine. We're not going to bother with that. A report just came out showing that the American authorities are now so concerned about the fact that the RCMP and CSIS are compromised and incompetent, right? Like there's this guy named Sam Cooper, and he runs this Substack called The Bureau. He's an actual legitimate investigative journalist, and he's been talking to the Americans, and he's been talking to RCMP people, under condition of anonymity. And the Americans are like, we can't trust the Canadian government to do anything correct. The RCMP is compromised. CSIS is compromised. The Canadian government is compromised. We are doing our own investigations of money laundering and narco trafficking going on in Canada because you guys are useless, right? And a lot of this stuff is happening in British Columbia, and it goes back to the banks
Well,
because
so
they are laundering all this money and they're letting it happen.
remember when I was on Highway Through Hell, that Discovery TV show?
I never did watch it, and I did not know that you were a guest on that show. This is the guy, the towing guy, right, on the Coquihalla
Yeah,
Pass.
Dave Davis and all that. Yeah, I ran Heavy Wrecker, so I was on one season running Heavy Wrecker and that.
Oh,
But
so
one of the,
that's where you got all your practice on the camera.
I guess, yeah, good point. but we did one. It was like season 9. I forget what episode. There was a trailer on fire, and it burnt to the ground. And I'm cleaning it up at the end of the day with a little skid steer and scooping it up the stuff. And all of a sudden, these boxes of like laundry detergent, there was silver bars in the boxes of laundry detergent. And like they were Chinese boxes of laundry detergent, like with all Chinese or Korean lettering. I'm not wasn't great at telling the difference. But we even saw those bars reported to the RCMP, and we're like, hey, this seems like that's clearly money laundering. We got like it's all tracked shipment. They probably know where it's going and like who's gonna collect it. And like there's clearly something suspicious going on here. Why are someone sending full bars of silver? And then they're like, nah, we don't want to investigate that. We'll just put that in the lost and found. And they put it in a lost and found.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Bars of silver.
Like, and I mean like full like 1 kilogram bars of silver.
And the RCMP just put it in lost and found.
Yeah, and there was like
You have got to
bars of
be
silver,
fucking kidding me.
yeah, and they were waiting. Like, yeah, there's nothing suspicious going on there. That's a totally normal thing to ship bars of silver in laundry detergent.
Wow.
Honestly, that's one of the ones where you wish a camera crew wasn't there. But
Wow. Holy cow.
that
Wow.
one's can't like that one's documented on like the Highway Through Hell on Discovery Channel, and they're like, yeah, whatever.
Wow. So, hey, speaking of other BC corruption, we'll get it back to trucking. There was another over and above the Terrace thing. Um, there was a green energy.
I don't want to go into that one. That's not even no. That's fuck. People can Google that story on their own, but
Are you done talking about it?
I'm done talking about that one. That one is just another insane one that people can search.
Right. It was a lesson learned the hard way, perhaps.
All I'm gonna say about it is that I think it's ridiculous that taxpayer money can be put towards programs that the government can then hire private businesses to distribute the taxpayer money. And if you comment on how that taxpayer money is being spent and raise concern, the private business will threaten to sue you for commenting on how taxpayer money is being spent. Like, no, what a great way to shut people up on government spending of money. Send it to a private business, and if you comment on it, well, now you're not commenting on the government, you're commenting on a private business spending the government taxpayer money, and they'll threaten to sue you if you keep commenting on it. Like, hmm, well, that's definitely not a way to hide corruption.
All right, duly noted. Yeah, I get it. That's
I mean,
amazing.
we just don't. That's the thing. You don't have the money. You can win, but you don't have the money to fight the lawyer fees. You can't win, and like it's not worth Edison getting involved in legal battles.
No, no, you guys have got enough of your own, including building trucks. So let's steer it back to building trucks. So
Yeah,
there's another great video you put out here recently of your build plan for Tolco, which is a large forestry company in Western Canada. I think they're in Quebec and Ontario as well. And you're going to build a logging truck for them.
yeah. Tolkol wants a hybrid truck there, so that's gonna be pretty cool.
It was going to be a tri drive with a quad trailer.
Yeah, the winch tractors, the log truck are all gonna be tri drives.
Right. Who are you building winch tractors for?
Gonna build one for ourselves for our own testing purposes, and then we're gonna build one for Royal. And I mean, it really these next trucks, these next hybrid trucks are all prototypes. So we're gonna build them. We're gonna put them out in the field with some customers. They're gonna test them, see how it works, see if we need to improve anything, make any changes needed, and then build a few more. It's still going to be a 3 year process to really get to production on the hybrid trucks. 3, 4 years. You got to be able to build a truck that you know is going to get 1 million kilometers without any issue. And to put that 1 million kilometers on it, it takes time. which is also what we found out harder to raise investment money because they're either leeches or the good ones. We met some really good investors, but they want to see that 3 year turn back, and that's a little bit harder when you're like, oh, we got to have a whole development thing.
Right, because it's basically, I mean, it's a new technology, but it's not a new technology. That you know, diesel electric locomotives. I mean, this goes back to our first conversation. They're a thing. You know, a Toyota Prius because these trucks are all using regenerative braking. You guys are just reformulating this for on highway truck use.
Yep.
And you know, the funny part is that like I see you're telling me about having trouble with investors. um, Elon Musk, your competitor over there at Tesla, and his ugly toilet trucks. I'm very public about the fact I'm not a fan of his equipment. It just the aesthetics of it are it's caving to the the sort of false gods of efficiency. Oh, we have to be like totally aerodynamic. So now our truck looks like porcelain and it looks like a toilet. And it's got all these restrictions on it because it's only allowed to pull 80,000. So it's got batteries. And
Yeah.
one of the interesting things I see, and again, this sounds like I'm ragging on Elon Musk here, but it's less to do that about him than the sort of world he's built that we're all trapped with him inside it. Is he's got all these fanboys on Twitter, right? And they're always going off about, oh, truckers are gonna love this. And then like they make this post, and then like all of the truck drivers on Twitter are like, no, this is ugly. No, where's the shifter? How am I gonna do this? Where's the bunk? Why is it all screens? Where's the gauges? Like, he gets ragged on by actual truckers, but
Hmm.
then his fanboys, because they're being paid and they get all this engagement, are talking about how great his truck is. But then you'd like dig into the details, and they're fully electric, fine, but that fully electric truck comes with limitations, right? Like it has to
It,
it has to sit on a charger.
and I think that there's probably some applications for it. I think Coca-Cola's that had them is a good application, is that they're delivering pops to like 7-Eleven. So you drive 1 kilometer, half a mile to one 7-Eleven, and you get the cart out and you roll in and you stock the shelves, and then you drive to the like a little bit, and you may do a 12-hour day and only drive 50 kilometers. That's probably a great application for electric. It's quiet, it's nimble, it moves around the city fine. That damn sure is not going to be a long haul truck, and it's not going to be a heavy haul logging truck. So there's different. I think we're going to look at different things going forward in the future. Is that you're going to see diesel mechanical still has a place. You're going to see hybrid, which I think is the winner still overall. Um, has a lot of the advantage, and then you'll see some full electric and some niche things. There's not a one magic bullet, one size fits all solution anymore going forward.
Right. Well, and I think this is the thing people outside the trucking industry don't understand because they just see trucks going up and down the road and it's like, oh, there's a truck. They don't know the difference between, like there was a photo posted by this guy on Twitter the other day, and it was like a drilling rig truck, right? Like it actually had like a water drilling or some kind of like exploration, like it was like a tandem axle drive. And I think it had, a big 20,000 pound steer on it. And,
Yeah.
it had been involved in some incident. And, people are like, oh, it's just the usual suspects getting in this accident. And I'm like, well, they're not really in that business. And this is like actually a vocational truck, right?
Yeah.
There's a difference between vocational trucks. There's a difference between a freight hauler and the guy with the little single axle Coke or Pepsi trailer running around town doing deliveries. Then there's your tri-drive winch tractor that's dragging around a 90-ton component for an actual drilling rig. There's all these differences in things, but like, again, they make rules that are for one thing, not understanding that like there's a bunch of different players, there's a bunch of different applications, there's a bunch of different nuances, and you can't just have this one rule or this one way of looking at it.
Exactly. And I mean, that's why too, is like now we're just going to build a bunch of trucks with 18 speeds and mechanical transmissions as well. So it makes sense. So like the hybrid takes a while to develop. Like, why don't we take our time, really make sure that that's real honed in, and then how do we support our like we don't want to be a company that's just going to be relying on investor money for the next 3, 4 years. We're building the shop, so let's just build some mechanical trucks and sell those to customers, generate that revenue, bring that profit in that we can use to then grow the company naturally without having to rely on the investors. It's like there's not one size fits all. We can do both. There's no difference in our truck design or anything.
Right. So, hey, another thing I want to ask. There's a couple more
I
questions.
haven't
I know.
announced that publicly yet. Right. We
Right.
haven't. We're just building one. We haven't actually talked about that yet.
All
Okay,
right.
but I'll send you some pictures later after this.
Right. Okay. Oh, I got a scoop. Well, I know
You got
your
a
time.
scoop on that one. Yeah, yeah, you got a scoop on that
All
one.
right. I know your time is short, Chase. Originally, we were going to have 2 hours. We only have one. You have another meeting to go to, and thank you very much. But I want to get in a couple more questions here before
For
the
sure.
before the clock strikes 1 p.m. out there in BC. Um, you were just in Montreal at the Exposition Camion.
Yeah, that's I guess how you pronounce that.
Right. Yeah. What did you find out there? What did you see? What was your impression of being in Montreal?
Oh, Montreal was brilliant. Beautiful, beautiful place. Um, actually gained a lot of respect for the. Turns out there's a lot of rednecks and truckers and just good blue collar guys. Like I guess I pictured Quebec. Sorry to people in Quebec. I was picturing Justin Trudeau when I was picturing Quebec. I'm like, oh, it's a bunch of Justin Trudeau. I'm like, that's what people from Quebec are like? Like Justin Trudeau. I'm like, fuck Quebec. What a bunch of narcissistic pieces of shit. And then you actually get out and first time in Quebec and you're like, oh no, these guys are just Albertans speaking French. These people are awesome.
Oh man, dude,
So many
if you
similar to
ever
the
go up north,
like, man, they should not let Justin Trudeau represent them. That's not helping their image at all.
no. Quebec is just like any other society. It's got all its weird divides. I've done a lot of trucking in the north. Um, yeah, places like Senatare and Rouen, Noranda, and Chibougamau, Jonquière. You get up into northern Quebec, man, and it's some serious redneck vibes. It might as well be northern Alberta, but just speaking French.
I kind of dig it. I like it.
Awesome. So did you take one of your trucks there or were you just like checking it out?
No, we just with the tariffs and being announced in the U.S., we wanted to reevaluate our supply chain, and we're trying to move from away from as many American suppliers as we can to Canadian suppliers. I don't have confidence with what's going on in the U.S. with tariffs. So like, hey, we're nimble. We're just starting out our production. If we can drop American suppliers and move to Canadian suppliers, we will. So we found like some ones that we can shift to. And we're like, we also are still working on moving away from China as much as possible. So we want to see like, hey, in the EV space or in that space, like who in Canada is making EV truck components? Turns out nobody yet. There was none. That's still not North American, like US or Canada. Like there's a few companies that are starting out and you talk to them, but they're not ready to go to full production yet. They've got great concepts, great products. I hope they can so that we can buy them, but they're not ready. So it's like, oh, even if there's Chinese tariffs, we're still screwed on the hybrid thing, which is also another reason for the mechanical. It's like if they come out with crazy China tariffs, those parts are not made in North America. If they come out with like a 200% tariff on those parts, like the business is done. Like the economics don't make sense anymore. If the batteries, the electric axles, the power distribution equipment has the tariffs, I cannot source that from North America. We've been looking, and you're
Not
like,
yet.
like not yet, maybe, but like I can't like all of a sudden increase the price of the truck to double the price of a truck in the hopes that I'll keep selling them until somebody starts up the factory. So it's like, okay, like with all this, I can hedge my bet. Like I know that there's parts all made in North America for the mechanical. So it's like, okay, if it does come on, the whole business isn't screwed over by one crazy change in government tariffs. I can still source all the mechanical parts from North America
Right.
and be competitive. So
This is
that's
a good segue. Speaking of mechanical, I almost forgot one of my questions, but this comes back to it. So you and I both posted about this interesting news item a few months ago. You made a little video, and
yeah,
I just did a little thing on Twitter, and it was about the it was a internal memorandum from Kenworth of Canada to
Yeah.
all of their dealers saying that they were going to reduce the availability of manual transmissions in their trucks to where they would only offer them for 10% of their total sales.
Yeah.
What the F?
There's a huge point scoring system, and you need so many points. And oh, an automatic transmission gets you more points than this. So they're like, okay, well, only 10%. And you got to have aerodynamics and light weighting. And the more things you do, the more. So if you build a heavy vocational truck, you got to build so many highway trucks to offset that heavy vocational. Now, that's a North American under EPA, so Environment and Climate Change Canada recognized the US ones and US point scoring and then stack their own things on it. Um, no, I'm not going to address it publicly and say these things publicly on the thing until the government changes, hopefully in an election, because if they, as soon as they find the loopholes, they'll fucking close them just to be dicks. But there's loopholes for low volume manufacturing, for people building vocational trucks at low volume. Unfortunately, the big guys are just above that volume. They're not. It's for Canada unique trucks, so vehicles that aren't registered in the EPA with the EPA and are low volume. So all the big OEMs are basically out of that, but there are certain exemptions if you are just building off highway trucks, and they use those exemptions for people making things like service rigs. Your well drilling equipment. Like you're not going to get an oil and gas service rig to be aerodynamic no matter how
No.
much you work on that wind tunnel testing. Like it's just that's just not going to happen. So
Well,
they
no,
have
and
it.
hauling logs is pointless too because there's a zillion edges. There's no way you're ever going to make any logging truck aerodynamic. Impossible. When I see a T680 or some other like sloped hood logging truck, I just want to rip my hair out. It's
Well, and
not
the
doing
thing is,
anything. You're hauling logs.
business owners aren't stupid. Like, yeah, I'm sure that there are people that are like, no matter if the cost is higher, I'll still buy that big high hood Kenworth. But the rational business owners, they tend to look at things like fuel economy. Yeah, but the thing is, like, they look at it. You know what affects fuel economy? Getting proper fuel air mixture ratios. Having those big air breathers sucking in cold air from outside of the hood engine bay. You're now sucking in cold air into there, which is more compressed, more oxygen dense, and you're getting more air, so you're getting better fuel, and you get better cooling. So the better cooling, the less your engine fan has to work. The less your engine fan works, the cooler that coolant temperature, the more it can flow through, the more wind you get, the cooler your block is, the more efficient you get that combustion going. So yes, they optimize it. Those 880 style slopes is I believe it's really optimized for highway truck efficiency, pulling 80,000 pounds on an interstate. Okay, so like that's not logging. You're not 160,000 pounds in the mountains pulling heavy. You want that cooling. You want to be able to chill it. That will get you better. There's a reason why all these guys still want their mechanical, still want their big rads, still want their big air intakes. They're not dumb. Business owners and truckers are way smarter than the government gives them credit. They're looking at the pros and cons and all of things and making a decision on running their business. It's stupid for the government to get in there because if it is really more efficient and you're going to save a lot of money on fuel by going aerodynamic, 99.9% of all the businesses say, I'm going to maximize my profit. I'm going to buy the more aerodynamic truck that's going to lower my fuel consumption and I'll have more money in the bank and I'll be a more competitive business. Why are you mandating somebody that doesn't use those trucks to use those trucks if they're saying, no, there's a reason I still pay the premium for the big rad and the big air breathers. I need that for heavy haul applications. So it's nice that there is low volume manufacturing. Let's just shut up about that exemption though, collectively between us. And like, do not start saying that there's exemptions. Let's just ignore that for another 3 months until the Canadian government changes, or else Trudeau on the last way out will give a big FU to the truckers because he hates truckers. So as the truckers and everyone listening to this podcast, just shut up for another 3 to 4 months, and then we'll talk about the exemptions.
Right. So hopefully I can get you back on the show before then. There's so much we could go on about. Maybe Donald Trump just fired 1,000 people at the EPA. Maybe some common sense will return to the EPA about these matters, and maybe there'll be some changes in America, which will naturally flow into Canada.
Because Canada will be like, he fired the EPA. We've got to double down and try and match the US offset. They're going to be dirtier, and they're just going to on the way out. So let's all just be quiet. Let's hope he just, like, people complain all the time, be like, oh, Trudeau vacations in Tofino. Good. Let's just hope between now and the election, they just keep going on vacation and don't notice things. And then when we have a sensible, reasonable government with common sense, then we can like just start celebrating.
All right. What a optimistic note to end it on, sir. Chace, thank you for coming on. We could go on for hours. People love you. I think you're great. There's so many more questions I have for you. We'll have to set it aside for now, but thanks for coming on Voice of Gord, sir.
Oh, pleasure. Let's do this more frequently. We shouldn't leave a year in between it.
No, exactly. We'll figure it out. I'm writing a book. I want you to be in my book. We've got lots to talk about, man.
You bet. You bet. Always a pleasure.
All right, way of the road.